I've forgotten what it feels like to win football matches. It's been so long since Arsenal won a game of football. It's weird. It's not normal. It's not okay. And we're going to talk about it in today's Arsenal Raw Reaction Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode. Joining you the morning after. This is getting tiring, man. This is getting tiring. The morning after another defeat. Another defeat. That's that's where we're at. Now look, it's people have been obviously complaining that I get a little bit negative at the moment. The reason why I'm getting negative at the moment is because I'm genuinely gutted by what's going on right now. And it's tough, man. It's really tough because it's just Arsenal becomes such an important part of our lives, and we've had it so good for so long. And I complain about people acting spoiled, but we've had it so good for so long. Yeah, it's really tricky this, and it's all right when you can point to some decisions, and we're going to talk about some of the decisions last night. You can compartmentalize it, you can contextualize it, but it's tough when it's on you as well, and it is on us. It has been on us, and yeah, we're going to go into it, but don't at me like, Tom, I don't come here for your negativity because we're just going to talk about it as it is. We're going to talk about the game as it was. We're going to talk about the positives. We're going to talk about the negatives. We're going to talk about what can get better, how it can get better, why it's going to get better. Fingers crossed. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Martin, Damien, Tom, Rob, Paul, Louis, Matt G, Black Shine, Runs of Cows, Ainsy. We've got Arasilki and Shari and Mark, Emmanuel, Clincy, on Gruntley Poos, Stevie, Barry T, Maximius, Dave, and plenty more of you guys and girls, as always, in the chat box. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you are listening on catch up, someone let me know yesterday that apparently over on Spotify, some of the episodes hadn't been showing up. I've chased it down with the relative authorities, and hopefully that's fixed and they are showing up. I checked this morning and yesterday's were there. So hopefully they are there for the foreseeable future as well. But please do drop a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on. We do shows every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. No matter my health, we continue to do it both physically and mentally. We always do it. So please do make sure you continue to join us. Right. Inter Milan 1, Arsenal 0. Better against a good team, but still there are issues. And it was a performance that certainly did, to a degree, particularly in the second half, respond to the weekend's utter embarrassment that I felt following that performance. No Declan Rice, which I think we definitely felt. The lack of Declan Rice was definitely a presence that was there. But still, we lacked the zip, we lacked the verve, we lacked the excitement, we lacked the energy, we lacked the fluidity, we lacked the unpredictability. It's the threat, though. That word threat is really what I have missed from this Arsenal team. The peppering of the opposition goal, the zipping the ball up the pitch, the brave attacking, the direct play. I miss it. I really, really miss it. And I don't know necessarily why it's gone, other than talking about missing personnel sometimes. It can't be that it relies so heavily on Martin Odegaard, who is a massive, massive player. Don't get me wrong. And him being back, hopefully for the weekend, came off the bench yesterday. Hopefully him being back helps. But this is such a big red flag. It's a red flag that it's relied upon Odegaard so much, and that this period of him being out from the last international break has seen a shift to a more reductive style, to a more conservative approach to games. Through necessity, sure, but should it be through necessity? Again, No Ethan Winery on the starting 11 sheet. Really disappointing. There was just one change, of course, from the team that played against Newcastle, and that was a change that Arteta was forced to make. Because Declan Rice, of course, was injured, so Ben White comes in. Everyone else is the same team that I complained about heavily, the same team that I criticized for their performance on the weekend. There's two schools of thought here. Either one, Arteta don't trust the other players. Arteta doesn't trust the other options. He doesn't trust Winery, doesn't trust Jorginho, doesn't trust Sterling, doesn't trust other options. On the other hand, maybe he wanted to see if his players would be given the chance to respond. Maybe he wanted to see if those players that played so horrendously against Newcastle would respond. And there was, to a degree, a response in this game. To a degree. But yeah, I don't know what Nwanery's got to do to start. I don't know. I'm not one of those that sits on we can't rely on a 17-year-old to save us. It's not about that. Take away the context of his age. Take away the context of how early it is in his Arsenal career. And just look at what he's done. Just look at what he does in games. Look at what he did in this game. It is different. It is energy. It is unpredictability. It is quality. It is incision and threat. Things that have been lacking and missing. That is what I want to see in this team again. Now, yes, there was controversy in this game. Arsenal had a penalty call turned down for what is, I don't know how this isn't a foul. Anywhere else on the field, of course, you're not going to see a player punching another guy in the head and getting away with it. But what I mean is, anywhere else on the field where a player is late and misses the ball, and the player makes contact with the ball first, and the opposition player then goes through the player, be it with their feet, their chest, their head, their arms, their punching fisted hands. I don't understand how that's not a penalty. Now, I think a penalty win would have covered up some of the cracks, but I'll take the penalty. Don't get me wrong. I'll take it. I want that pen. That pen it's clear. And I was listening to the TNT commentary, which, by the way, I love Ali McCoist. I really enjoy listening to a lot of what he says. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy, maybe for the nostalgia of Clive Tilsley and Ali McCoist when they're a commentary duo. I really enjoy listening to him. But my goodness me, TNT's commentary last night was about as anti-Arsenal, other than Martin Keown, who had to stand up for the Gunners to the nth degree. And then as I was working later into the evening, I chucked on the BBC Sport Champions League match of the day. And it was far better. It was far, far better. There was a better discussion about this incident. There was a better discussion about the performance. And yeah, it felt really anti-Arsenal, besides Martin Keown throughout the game and throughout the post-match analysis as well. But goodness gracious me, this was a penalty if you've ever seen one. This is a penalty as well, according to the rules. But the rules are absolutely stupid. I've seen some people try to somehow funnily, laughably suggest that asking why Moreno's hand's there. That's just where your arms go. That's just where your arms go. Like, to try and kick your leg up to get on that, you're using your arms to balance. That's just where your arm goes. That's just where it goes in those moments. He's not trying to gain an advantage by putting his arm up in the air. He's not purposely trying to block a shot or block a cross or block the ball with his arm. I'm not annoyed at the referee for giving this. I'm not annoyed at the referee at all for giving this, because he's just doing his job. He's just doing his job because that's the rules in the Champions League. I'm annoyed at the rules in the Champions League. These rules are silly. It's going to get to a point where you're going to see players going into the box and just trying to kick the ball onto the arms of the opposition players. That's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to see. because these rules are silly. And I'm not focusing too much on these because I think the broader context of the game is more important than the two penalty incidents. But it would be remiss of me not to discuss them. We saw an incident last night in the Aston Villa game where a handball was given on Tyrone Mings. Scandalous decision. We saw it against Arsenal and Bayern Munich. Wasn't given. Referee, props to him. Common sense. We don't want to see penalties given for those moments. We don't want to give penalties for those moments at all. I don't want to see penalties given for those moments. Those that are really meticulous might say, well, he's handballed it. He's picked it up. The ball's been passed to him. He's picked it up. No. Use some common sense. Protect the game. Protect the game's integrity. Don't give stupid decisions that go viral and make everyone look so stupid. And it does make people look stupid. It makes the referee look stupid. It makes him a laughing stock. It brings the game into disrepute to a degree. It's ridiculous that was given. But yes, moving into the actual performances itself. Tactically in the second half, I thought things changed for the better. Gabriel Jesus coming off of Mikel Merino, whether or not Merino was injured or not, it seems as though it was a bit of a forced change, which is a shame. Because you want to give credit to Arteta for the change, and you can give credit to the change because in some senses he could have brought on Jorginho. He could have brought in Jorginho and gone more like for like. He didn't. He brought in Gabriel Jesus, and Arsenal dominated the second half. Other than a couple of counter-attacks from Inter, Arsenal dominated the second half. Even when they brought on their better players, which, by the way, they rotated for this game, which obviously brings the game into even more a bit of a scrutiny for that. The tactical change was definitely a plus, a benefit, and I think it's something that we should probably look at doing perhaps going forwards in terms of the structure of the team when Odegaard isn't there. Using Jesus, using Havertz, using Trossard or Waneri or another attacking player as the midfield, having one holding midfielder in Partey, in Rice, who can cover those bigger areas alone rather than a box-to-box. For some games, it might be better, sure. But I think this was certainly a structure that I think was better for us. But it was just cross after cross after cross after cross. 46 crosses in this game. Nearly 20 corners in this fixture. Cross. I felt like I was watching the 21-22 or the 2021 season. All that was missing was Kieran Tierney on the left-hand side, pinging the ball in non-stop, and it really would have been deja vu. It absolutely was so incredibly frustrating just to see such a one-dimensional performance. And no big chances were created from these crosses. The chances that we got was kind of a shot on the left that deflected through to Havertz that he took really well. Bissek was excellent in stopping the shot from Havertz. You had on the right-hand side, Havertz kind of take a speculative curling effort from outside the box, which Sommer had to kind of push away. And then from a corner, I think it was actually Taremi who ended up getting a touch on it from a corner that led to Dumfries having to kick the ball off the line. So none of those 46 crosses led to an opportunity that you would describe as a big chance that Arsenal themselves could take. And not only that, but it wasn't like Inter had short defenders that aren't really good at defending and aren't really good at clearing. They did. That's what they had. And I remember watching Arsenal in the 2021 season going up against teams that had huge defenders, and we would chuck the ball into box for Aubameyang. And by the way, when we took Jesus onto the field and moved Havertz more into midfield, of course, Havertz is not going to be in that same centre-forward position as much. He still was at times, but it was speculative. Cross Junkie says, and you say we didn't need a striker. Again, at no point have I said that. At no point have I said that. The reality is that Arsenal have to find a different way of breaking these teams down without Odegaard. Because to be so reliant on his incision, his passing, his work. When was the last time we drove to the byline and cut the ball back? And it's not like we don't have the players to do that. It's not like we don't have the players like Martinelli, like Saka, who can drive to the touchline and cut the ball back. It's not like we don't have midfielders like Jorginho who can play line-splitting passes, who aren't playing. How Jorginho didn't get on the field until really late against Newcastle and not at all in this game, I don't know. Because if you want a midfielder that's going to give you that line breaking pass, Jorginho offers you that. I don't know if there's a fitness issue. I don't know if there's something to do with that. I don't really get it. I don't really understand why those decisions aren't being taken. And that is a criticism of Arteta. And that is something that he has to consider, has to rethink. And it's not like we haven't had time. It's not like we haven't had time on the training pitch since September to try different things. It's not about that. It's not about that at all. That's what I want to see. Ian says, you said more than a striker we needed a wide forward, which is not a bad shout, looking at Martinelli consistently messing up in the final action. But we also need a forward. I think, Ian, you've answered the question. I said that my priority was a wide forward because we need more variation. We need more speed. We need more threat. We also need a centre forward. My priority was that. It's that whole waffles and pancakes analogy again. Some people think because I said I want something means I don't want the other thing. Give me a plate of pancakes and waffles, but I'll be taking those waffles first. It's funny how people absorb content, of course, and make mistakes like Cross Junkie has done in the chat there. But we need two of these forwards into the side. We need to be looking at trying to strengthen those areas. And we need to be having more variation. Raheem Sterling didn't get on the field yesterday. Again, as I've talked about, 46 crosses, none creating a big chance. Yeah, tough. And Chelsea are coming up, obviously, at the weekend. And that in itself is a scary reality because even though they play tonight, they'll be resting players. They'll be resting. They're playing a team called Noah. And I'll tell you what, there's going to be floods of tears this weekend if indeed Arsenal don't pick up a win in some ways, and quite rightly because it's not looking positive. It's not looking like there is too much difference in what we saw against Newcastle in terms of kind of the types of chances we were forced to be creating. We were able to create far more against Inter, but the variety of those chances was not in the same standing. It just wasn't. And there's a couple of players in particular who are really struggling. Gabriel Martinelli is in another dip. He just can't find that verve in his game. He can't find a way to beat his man. He's lacking assistance, and I don't think Jurrien Timber is, I think Jurrien Timber's a glorious footballer. But on the left-hand side, he doesn't play in the same way as he does on the right. And he's not the most kind of supportive in terms of overlapping to the degree that we need someone to be. Our wingers get doubled up on all the time. Saka has at least 2, sometimes 3 players on him. And we need a more supportive figure. And Odegaard, of course, has been that figure with Saka as well as Ben White and that supporting cast. Trossard isn't a central player in the midfield. He's just not. He's not a central player in the midfield, so stop playing him there. When Harry came on the field and twice spun an interplayer, the second time getting a shot away that, sure, went over the bar. It was his kind of first real sighter at goal because he hadn't really got much time to impact the game. But as soon as he came onto the field, he did something. As soon as he came onto the field, he created an opportunity for himself, something that not too many of these other players are doing. They're relying on getting balls into the box and just banging them into the box and hoping for the best. And when Harry comes off the bench and creates an opportunity for himself, which until that point no one else had really done, I'd start him on the weekend. If Odegaard isn't fit to start, even if Odegaard is fit to start, maybe you start both of them. Player Declan Rice. There's also an element of why can't we change structure? Like, can the structure not change to a degree? Do we have to stick to this system? We need to make sure we're doing more. At the moment, that's not happening. Well, let's go to part 2 in your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle some of your questions and more. If you've got any questions you'd like to throw into the chat box, please do drop a like, of course, on the video as always, and subscribe to the channel if you are indeed new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Jackie says, Tom, 2 questions. 1, do we start Rice and Partey together, seeing that Rice is better in the 6? What's the way forward for Martinelli? He has done good defensively, but he offers us very little. I mean, it's all well and good saying, he offers us defensively really good work rate on the left-hand side, and that's important for some games, and that's been valuable in some games, like at Manchester City this season. But uh, it's to have a side that's meant to be challenging for the title looking so toothless in attack means that you need to start questioning those individuals. You need to start questioning what they're applying. You need to start questioning what they're doing. But you need to start questioning what they're being coached to do as well. 46 crosses, man. Now that's it looks like Arsenal have created loads of chances in the game. Like if you looked at the stat sheet, this is where stats, of course, you can use them in different ways. If you look at the stat sheet, if you look at that, it makes it look like Arsenal have had a really dominant performance. But the reality in the context of the game is very simple. The first half was competitive. Both teams probably cancelled each other out. Inter Milan got a penalty, took the lead. They don't have to attack. Inter Milan have not conceded a goal all season in the Champions League. Inter Milan haven't lost at home in the Champions League in 2 years. They're an exceptionally good defensive team. So, of course, they're more willing to absorb pressure, to bring the opposition's opportunities onto them because they know they've got players who can counter. So the context of the second half was that it allowed Arsenal to be more dominant. So we can all, like Martin Keown, bless him, did, on TNT, talking about how the second half performance was much better. It was allowed to be better. Like it was enabled to be better because the context of the game from an Inter perspective made it so. So, and we didn't take advantage of that, and we kept playing the same way, and we didn't change things up, and we didn't do enough to test them in different ways. And that's the reality of the situation. Cardi says, do you genuinely believe we dominated the second half, or do you think the Inzaghi realised that we couldn't hit water if we fell out of a boat? And just believe, I think I've just touched upon that, Cardi, haven't I? I've just said, I think that, yes, I do think we dominated the second half, but I think the context of the game into having the lead, they were happy for Arsenal to be on the ball a lot more and to absorb that pressure. Jamil says, do you think after 2 previous heartbreaking title runs and the bad luck with decisions and refs, etc., the players are now actually starting to doubt the belief in themselves? Once the belief goes, which I don't think it has yet, then that's very, very, very difficult to get back. A win absolutely will help that. And when Arsenal finally get that result and get that victory, I think it would be, and I'm not talking about against Preston, of course, because we rotated and it was against a lower league opposition. But if Arsenal were to win on the weekend, this is why I was so keen to win this game and go as strong as we could. Because as soon as you get that win, as soon as those goals start to go in, it does take the pressure off. It does feel better. If Arsenal can get a win at Chelsea, if they can, of course, then end this period of the season before the next international break, without being in a position where they can then go through that and then have a very positive festive period, who knows? But right now the mood is on the floor. Kieran says, I think that the way that we played yesterday was a marked improvement on Newcastle, and playing a crossing heavy style would be more effective against Chelsea, who could be bullied in their own box. I hear what you're saying, Kieran, but I don't want to be in that way. Is that Alex in your profile picture? Why is Alex your profile picture? Kieran, from the different knock. Why is Alex your profile picture? But I don't want that to be our style. It's what we used to do. It's what Arsenal of old did at the start of Arteta's time. It's dull. It's based on, like, if you're talking about kind of high energy chances, you're relying on a lot of variables going your way. A cross is obviously a long ball into the box. It's not a ground pass or a slick movement. It relies upon a headed opportunity, which is much harder to take quite often than a ground shot. it's far less likely to score from those crossed opportunities than it is from those, those moments where the ball is on the floor. We're playing kind of this chaos football at times and trying to create opportunities out of nothing and through fortune and the ball falling for us. And there's a lack of purpose about how we're playing, a lack of invention about how we're playing. And, you put a ball into the box, it's an easy thing to do. It's a reductive thing to do at times. It can create opportunities, of course, and we saw some created, but nothing really too big. And it's really easy to defend. You just sit in the box, you keep your line the same, you flood the area, you make it very difficult for the opposition to get any kind of touch on the ball, and that's it. Fab says, "Is Arteta being arrogant?" I think arrogance a word that gets used alongside Arteta all the time. I never think it's used correctly. I think he's being stubborn. There's a difference between arrogance and stubbornness, and I think there's a stubborn element to Arteta, definitely, that is ultimately, I think in this case, holding us back. Kieran says, I disagree. They tried to keep the ball, but our press looked very strong and we started winning a lot more 50-50s and cleaning up the second balls. Goal line clearances, great saves and blocks. But it was all pretty easy, Kieran. It was all pretty easy for them. Like, they never looked uncomfortable, Inter. We never created with those 46 crosses. None of them led to a really big chance. The chances where we nearly scored came from an effort into the box that was deflected to Havertz that he volleys, and Bissek gets a great block on it that was going in. The Havertz long-range shot, curling effort, which in itself might actually be a cross. I'm not 100% sure, but it looked like a shot when he took it, obviously, curling into the top left-hand corner. And then the corner itself, which obviously isn't headed on by an Arsenal player that's cleared off the line, isn't headed by an Arsenal player. 46 crosses, and none of them have led to a major chance. Like, that's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. Tom says Odegaard's absence has been a major test of Arteta's ability to adapt and be flexible. He's beginning to fail. Odegaard returning will paper over the cracks. I'm beginning to doubt that we have a top-class manager. I mean, you don't need to doubt, Arteta's ability to have taken Arsenal to where they are. This is the biggest test of Arteta's tenure, without question. This is the biggest test that he has faced during his time at the club. And if he gets through it and takes Arsenal back into a track of consistency and of a strong winning run, it will be a hell of an achievement once again. But it's very difficult to see the forest through the trees at the moment, based upon how we are playing. Vanajou says, are we starting to see the Trossard that left Brighton? He seems a bit moody and not really playing to his potential. Maybe the Saudi links have got into his head. I don't think so. I just think he's playing out of position, and it's not really seeing him do too many good things. Paul says, Tom, I love the show, but we told you Havertz wasn't good enough. Neither was Sterling, and neither of that appalling transfer window. But Havertz, of course, I think personally is far better than clearly you rate him. He came very close to scoring last night. Of course, if it wasn't for an excellent block by Bissek. Sterling, I'm not going to argue about. Like, Sterling was a panic buy. We've talked about this before. Like, I thought the only thing I feel I've been wrong about is I thought he might bring more than Nelson, but Nelson I think has arguably had a better season than Sterling on loan at Fulham, and he's not even starting really there too often. Sterling was a panic buy. No one needs to tell us that. No one needs to give us that indication, and certainly it came because, of course, Arsenal's sales happened at the end of the window, and they couldn't find the player that they wanted to invest in such a short space of time. I sincerely hope we go into the market in January and add. We've got the financial freedom to do that. We've sold players. We've had an effectively net zero summer. There is no excuses but to sign players in January. There is no excuses to not sign an attacking player in January. None at all. And if Arsenal don't sign an attacking player in January, regardless of the fact that Edu has left, I don't want to hear anyone coming up with any excuses as to why Arsenal haven't signed an attacking player, because there are no excuses for why Arsenal shouldn't sign an attacking player. And I am very careful about the use of the word excuses, because it is an overused word. It's a far, far too overused word at times, because there are genuine reasons why certain things happen. But there's no excuses in January not to add an attacking player in January. None whatsoever. Ian says, are you convinced about Merino? No, it's difficult to judge the guy. I've talked to you guys about this before. He was injured in pre-season. He actually returns from pre-season for his first training sessions, gets a shoulder injury. The player never catches up. My problem is that he's being used too much I think Jorginho should be used, who did have a pre-season, who is getting regular rest, who's got more line-breaking passes. I don't really know why he's not, because he should be. But Merino's not convinced us. For those that have ruled him out already, that you're naive because you did the same with Havertz, and obviously he's proven a lot of people wrong since then. But Merino is not fully fit. He's not back. He's still catching up, and I think missing pre-season and doing that business quite late in the window, obviously, I think has contributed to that to a degree too. Gooner Jones says panic buy is not used too often. It wasn't a panic. Reece wanted game time and Sterling was available. It was a panic buy. A panic loan. Of course it was a panic loan. Of course it was. Sterling was never, ever, ever on Arsenal's radar until the final 48 hours of the window. That is the definition of a panic move. It was. You may not like it. You may not want to associate panic moves with Arsenal because it seemed like a thing of the past to a degree, but it was. There's no excuses. There's no excuses, sorry. There's no getting around that. It was a panic signing. Reece asked to leave. Arsenal needed to bring in a wide player, and a player who's been disappointing for the last however many seasons was signed. It's as simple as that. It's things like that where I empathize with people's frustrations about being toxically positive or trying to explain away everything. You have to be objective. You have to look. You have to look at it in certain ways. Ruben says Merino is not ready at all. Ball keeps bouncing off him, boots the ball out, and in the first action of the game, fitness isn't there. The way he was blowing after 10 minutes against Bournemouth, as I say, he's not fit. If you speak to any professional footballer that's missed a pre-season, they will tell you that you are never the same. You don't catch up. You just don't. And that is showing. That is showing week after week. Some people are embarrassing themselves in the way in which they're speaking about him, of course. But that's because they don't care about the context. But the context is, of course, that he's not fit. But then it's on Arteta to recognise that as well. It's on Arteta not to use him. So if you want to point the finger, point it at Arteta from starting the guy over and over and over again when you need to try and get him fit, yes, but you don't have to force to play him every single week in, week out, when he's clearly not there yet. Clearly not there yet. Mix Mitchell says, I agree, the pre-season thing, but Merino is just not good enough. I mean, you've just not watched the guy. Like, if you've watched him play for El Sociedad, you watched him play for Spain, you know the quality that he possesses. You know how important he's been. You know the numbers. You know exactly what he's produced in La Liga for the last however many seasons. The guy has got significant quality. He's not shown it yet for Arsenal. And if you want to just turn around and say that he's this, he's that now, feel free and own it when he proves you wrong later. But the reality is he is far better than he is showing right now. And I sincerely hope that we see that when indeed he starts to find his way. LMS said, I'd have started Raheem and Waneri last night. I just want to see something different at this point. Silas says, our technical director starts a project and leaves before it yields anything. And especially, again, I hate the whole reductive way of saying it's done nothing. I think that's lazy. It's lazy analysis. Obviously, the project is taken us to somewhere that Arsenal fans haven't experienced for a very long time. Maybe it's a younger fan base, of course, that are experiencing it at the moment, that you didn't go through what a lot of us went through during the late noughties and the 2010s. Maybe you didn't go through that like we went through it, and it's impatience. We went through that, and it was horrible. And we are now obviously having brought in this new regime, this new project, in a place where expectations are around titles. Expectations are around trophies at a far, far, far higher level because of the work that's been done. So, like, saying it's not yielded anything is obviously just not true. Chunho says we should just take Merino out of the lineup right now. He's clearly not ready. Ant says Martinelli is a one-trick player and has been found out by defenders. He's the fourth choice left winger for a struggling Brazilian team. We need better. RM says, look how hard Martinelli worked off the ball yesterday, and people want Arteta to start Sterling. Yeah, but it's about what he's doing on the ball, RM, that's a problem right now. It's about what he's doing on the ball that's not good enough at the moment. It's not saying he's a bad player. It's not saying he's not got it in him, but he's not applying that quality right now on a consistent basis enough. And that's my concern. Watermelon says, hey, Tom and Gunners, I think we miss midfielders with shot ball ability like Rosicky, Kleb, Jack, and Cesc. Guys with line splitting passes and always finding space, can receive in tight spaces. We have two players that do that, Odegaard and Jorginho. At the moment, to a degree, Partey, you could argue as well, but from a deeper point of view. And that is definitely something that's missing from this squad. We need more creativity. We need more incision. We need more direct passing. That is the reality. PW says it's not Martinelli's fault. No one is at the end of his crosses. But if that's all he's doing, that's two people's fault. It's A, Martinelli, because he needs to have more variation in his game. It's B, on Arteta, because clearly there is an instruction there. Clearly that's an instruction. RM says Martinelli has the most key passes yesterday. How many key passes was it, RM? And they will come from crosses, which are speculative. Again, context. Stats are great, but you've got to use them in context. If you use them vaguely like you just have, it doesn't work. 4 key passes, and how many crosses did he have in the game? And I imagine probably all of them came from crosses. So that's, again, it's decision making, it's variation, it's predictability, it's execution. And that's sad. And he was taking corners as well. It's worth pointing out as well. Boss says, I can't lie, Tom. I just feel I feel bare. Teams just know how to play against us. We need to change up our gameplay. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay, says Martinelli is very inconsistent. It has become clear we cannot rely upon him, and we should start working on getting 2 new wingers next season ASAP. Kieran says, who do we sign in January? I want the bare minimum of forwards. Marmoush, of course, the Bundesliga forward, and someone who can cover for Odegaard. Can't get a like for like, but a player who can do something. You know, if someone like Eze is available in January, which is going to be very expensive to do, obviously he is someone that we like and we've looked at before, and he is very creative and he is a threat. So maybe that's someone that you can look to. But the problem with Eze is, of course, he plays kind of as a wide attacking playmaker at times. And does he fit seamlessly into this Arsenal structure? I'm not sure. I think you need to look at some of the, someone like Florian Wirtz would be a pipe dream, frankly. But that's the type, the Musialas of this world, the drivers of the ball, the creators, but also such dangerous technical players. I'd love to see. That's why I was really keen on a Xavi Simons in the summer. Seeing someone like that, someone who's a chaos factor themselves that can create something. That's what I want to see. I want to see these players that are on the up. And I don't want to see players that are like just names, but are actually doing things, that are actually on the way forwards. I don't want projects. I don't want Sterlings. I don't, to a degree, I don't want Havertz, players that, you need to find, again, their best form. I want players that are playing really well and that can come into this team. And maybe that contradicts the Eze, because the Eze's not had an amazing season, but Palace in general have not had an amazing season either. So maybe that provides some context there. But we need quality. We need to bring in players that are doing it now. We need to bring in players that are having fantastic seasons and have been consistent in doing that, not just this season, of course, but the previous season, and so on and so forth. T-Evolution says, honest question, where is the project leading? 5 years deep, goodness knows how much spent effectively out the title race. If we lose on Sunday, what are the tangible outcomes of this process? Everyone knows where the project has taken us. Everyone knows where we have gone since day dot. We had a team that were nowhere, a team that were going nowhere, a team playing terrible football, a team not being threatening, a team that weren't a threat to other sides, a squad that was full of mistakes, a squad that was unimaginative, a vicious, fractured fan base. And in the nearly 5 years since Arteta took over, we've stripped that squad out. We've brought in quality. We've played better football. We've pushed it forwards. We've risen up the table. We've come exceedingly close to finishing behind Man City. We're in a position where defeats are in a position where they are rare. And this little run that we're on is a rarity in the last 3 years. It's something we've not experienced really before. There's been little patches, of course. We had December last season, but they are mainly rare. And now it's, of course, when we reach these moments, we reach these dips, that we need to find ways out of them. But we are in a much better place than we were before. And as I said, when Arteta signed this contract, he has to deliver a title, has to deliver a Champions League. If he doesn't deliver those things in this contract, it tells us that he's taken us as far as he can take us. And then you need to start looking. You need to start looking at someone else. I've said that, and I'm happy to. I think he's earned this contract by where he's placed, where he's positioned us as a team. But you have to deliver, because no one person is ever bigger than the club, and the club always has to come first. You have to make sure that you're in that position. Multitude says quality. Fabio Vieira, Jesus, Zinchenko, Lokonga. By the way, Jesus and Zinchenko, when they were signed, of course, helped Arsenal get back into the Champions League. We've now outgrown them. We've outgrown them because, of course, we've signed other players. So it's all well and good trying to be smart and clever behind your keyboard warrior screen by throwing up names in isolation. The reality is that you've left out a hell of a lot of players that you know, and by the way, none of the players you listed there are in Arsenal's starting 11, by the way, that you know have taken us to where we are now. So Osimhen, yes, Osimhen playing currently for Galatasaray because there was such a queue of huge clubs that were queuing up to sign him this season for their teams. Fuad says, for me, TC, it's the overcorrectness of bringing in power players, dual winners, and neglecting the technical aspects of our game and creativity, and we can see it without Odegaard. I think it's a really good sum up. We've obviously changed the structure and the mold and the physicality of this side. You know, we aren't, we don't lose the physical battle, rarely. We rarely lose the physical battle, but we lose the technical battle a lot. We're not winning that technical battle as easily as we were before. And it's all well and good having, a very imposing, dominant side, but it's not consistent right now because we are lacking invention, we're lacking imagination, we're lacking balance. And that's a big, big miss in this team. So we need to find that balance again. Odegaard coming back will definitely help bring that balance. And that's really, really important, that when he returns, that we return to a winning ways once again and we can start seeing the best of us. But if it doesn't happen, that's what's going to be a big, big worry. Stephen says, we have been very one-dimensional in recent weeks. Just need to change things up at times. Small differences at the minute. Yes, there's fine margins going against Arsenal. If Inter don't get their penalty and Arsenal get theirs, which, in the Premier League might happen. It's a different game, of course. If Bissek doesn't get his leg onto that Havertz shot and it goes in, who knows what happens. If Mikel Merino's shot at Newcastle doesn't get blocked on the line, who knows what happens. But Arsenal need to be taking games away from referees. They need to be taking games away from fine margins, and they need to be beating sides comfortably like we was last season. And, I know Man City and Liverpool aren't beating teams comfortably, hand over fist, with ease this season. Man City are currently on a 3-game losing streak. Liverpool, of course, beating Bayer Leverkusen very well, but otherwise their wins have come in very tight games where they're squeezing past their opponents, but they're still winning. And that's where we need to find those changes. That's where we need to find the places where we're going to get those gains, where we're going to get those improvements that are going to lead us on to what we need to do next. Chelsea's massive. Chelsea is huge. And Arsenal losing in that game will be, for many, the final nail in the coffin of Arsenal's title challenge this season. It's very difficult, whether it's November or not, to see them getting back into that. And the focus will then turn to making sure that you can qualify for the Champions League for the following season. Of course, Arsenal are in the quarterfinals of the League Cup. We've still got the FA Cup to come, and you'd expect them to progress at least into the next round of the knockout phase of the competition of the Champions League. But the league is important, and Arsenal need to make sure that they don't slip too far. And yes, we've got a favourable fixture list coming up, but if we play like we've been playing, it doesn't give us much confidence. It doesn't give you much encouragement that you can respond to that. It's very, very difficult. to find. Mr. D says, lose to Chelsea and I'd change the manager. Who would you bring in, Mr. D? Who would you replace Arteta with if you were to sack him on Sunday? Who would you replace him with? I'd be keen to know. RM says marginal gains between the two top sides are typically decided by the superstar players and poor refereeing decisions. But, you know, we're not playing against the Man Cities and Liverpools every week. You know, we're losing at Bournemouth. We're losing at a poor Newcastle side that were winless in 5 Premier League games. So we should have the quality to take away the gap to make it so it's not about a marginal difference between the sides. Ike Geng's lost all credibility by saying he'd replace Arteta with Eric Ten Hag. Mr. D's gone with Mancini. It's like you can't even like. It's always funny these conversations you have. You're like, who would you place Arteta with? Oh, here's a name. Here's Ten Hag. Here's Mancini. Yeah, it's like clearly we have great ideas. We have a great solution to these problems. Somebody says Gasperini. I mean, Gasperini's done a great job, of course, with Atalanta, but at the end of the day, it's Atalanta. It's, you know, Italian in the Italian league doing decent job there. Got them into the Champions League, but is that going to translate to Arsenal? He's just signed a new deal with Nagelsmann. Just signed a new deal with Germany. He's going nowhere. Taboka says Inzaghi. Ironically, most people are crediting Arsenal as being the better side yesterday, and if it wasn't for that penalty goal, of course, Inter Milan, who knows what would have happened yesterday? Who knows what would happen? It wasn't exactly a game which highlighted, I thought, Inzaghi's brilliance by any stretch of the imagination. They got a lucky penalty, and Arsenal were pretty toothless, so that was pretty easily explained away. Barry says you can't put too much on one game. People need to calm down. I don't mind people needing. I don't mind people saying others need to calm down. But what I don't like is people saying that people can't criticize what's going on, because clearly there is a need to criticize what's going on. Clearly there's a need and a desire and a reality to what goes on here. You know, because you can't just sit and cover your eyes and pretend that this isn't happening and that we're not playing well. Goodness gracious me. You just can't. Farmy says we need to replace Arteta with Gyökeres. Gyökeres as manager. That's the solution to the problem. That is the solution to the problem. Boss says, nah, you watch, man. From next game, Arsenal are going to look dangerous. Quote me on this. I sincerely hope you're right. I sincerely hope that you are correct. I hope that that's where we find ourselves. So, yeah. Jason says, how long is Arteta's new contract? I think it's signed through until 27. I think it was an extension through until 2027. So, you know, that's where we need to be looking at as the timeline. That's the timeline for Arsenal to deliver a Champions League or a Premier League title. Goodner says, Tom, our fans are starting to underestimate opposition. I mean, sure, to a degree, but, you know, as I said, we lost at Bournemouth. I know Bournemouth have gone on to beat Man City, but the performance was dreadful. And yes, we were down to 10 men for 60 minutes, but the first 30 minutes was not good. Newcastle were winless in the Premier League in 5 before we played them. Inter Milan changed a significant portion of their team and left out some key players until the second half, of course. And the first half was poor, and it wasn't only until they got a lead at Arsenal turned things, you know, into a more dominant performance in the second period. Preston against lower league opposition, you know, yes, we dominated, yes, we scored 3 goals, but there's again context to that. I need to see the Arsenal that was here last season. I need to see the Arsenal, and it wasn't like before Odegaard got injured, we were playing amazing football. You know, it wasn't like before Odegaard came out the side, the Arsenal season was seamless. Like we beat Wolves, but we had to rely on a late Saka goal to confirm that victory. The Aston Villa game, winning away from home, impressive result. But yeah, we rode our luck in that game. You know, the chances Villa had, the chances that were missed, hitting the bar. The Brighton game, you know, it's not like exactly we created loads outside of Havertz's early goal before the red card either. The Spurs game, header from a corner. Atalanta 0-0. Man City away. 2 goals. Brilliant finish by Calafiori. Goal from a corner from Gabriel, then go down to 10 men. The Leicester game, we had to rely on goals in the 98th and 94th minute to win it. The Southampton game was, we went 1-0 down before then coming back in the second half to score 3. And there we are where we are with the Bournemouth game. The only game where I've been really genuinely impressed is probably PSG. Up against a really, talented side, 2 goals, taking the lead, right, defending well against an opposition of quality attackers. So it's not ordained that Ødegaard returns and everything is fixed. It's not like everything is fixed when Ødegaard comes back and it's guaranteed we're suddenly going to go like that and it's going to be fine again. We've got to deliver some pretty big performances. We've got to change radically to get back to where we are, to get back to where we need to be. And we're a long, long way from some of those performances from the end of last season. A long, 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 long way. So yeah, let's keep those fingers crossed. That's going to be the case. Amaru Gooner says, Tom, to see how we're doing. So many points were Chelsea behind us this time last year. They have got better or worse. I mean, they've obviously got better. We, of course, have got worse, and that's combined those two things together. And they're going to be a threat. They're going to be a challenge. Liverpool have beaten them. Man City have beaten them. We now need to beat them. And that's going to be our challenge. And it's an opportunity again. It's an opportunity to try and respond. It's an opportunity to try and change. S says, what's your lineup against Chelsea? Hopefully Ødegaard's back, in which case, of course, he starts. Rice and Partey back in the midfield again, so we can have our starting midfield, Rice, Partey, and Ødegaard, if Rice indeed is fit. White, Saliba, Gabriel. And the left-back's interesting because, clearly Timber's not supporting Martinelli great. Do you start Trossard on the left-hand side instead of Martinelli and play Trossard in his more natural role, or do you use Trossard from the bench as a more impact player, as he's tended to do better as a player coming off the bench, or do you stick with Martinelli? Again, that's a really tough question. But that's just the reality. When it comes to our DMs comment, says we should manage expectations. Efficiency is the real goal, but not good technical football. Did fans put so much pressure on Arteta to keep changing? It's pressure to change. I mean, it was pressure to continue moving forwards. That's what we always talked about. It was about progressing. It was about moving forwards and getting better each season. But we were on a good track. So, of course, we need to have those expectations that we're going to get better. Of course, we've got to be in these positions and where we are demanding that Arsenal continue to do what they've done as an absolute minimum. That should just be an absolute minimum that you expect Arsenal to stay and then to push onwards. But so far, we have gone backwards. The football has got worse. Yes, there's mitigating circumstances. Yes, there's injuries. But the team that played at, Newcastle was only missing, Calafiori, who wasn't here last season, and Ødegaard, who has been missing for a little while now. And we've had plenty of time to try and change that. The performance was dreadful. So that's the reality. Barry says, Trossard is our super sub. We should start him there. Ansi says, Tom, would you say playing that 4-4-2 formation is showing for other teams to exploit our weakness and we have no creative options? It seems like there's definitely a creative gap by playing that certain style. It's not worked, and that's on Arteta for not recognising that and not changing it, not tweaking it. Is there any news on Rice? Not yet. Arteta will face the press, of course, on Friday, and we'll hear from him. And as he gives an update on Declan Rice, and we hope that it's not too serious, and hopefully Rice is back. Right, we're going to end the show there. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Please do join us for our next show tomorrow morning. We'll also have a preview show for you at some point as well tomorrow evening, perhaps, if not on Saturday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.